Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're here again in our series of Here the Elders from the Raising the Awareness Group. And your family on the struggle and in the streets, building with the warriors and the elders, Raising the Awareness Group Media. With us today is Africanus, our leader and host of the Blog Talk Show, which airs every Wednesday at 8 o'clock. The co-founder of the Raising Awareness Group, Kufu Aku Mentuhotep, myself, M. Kuemzi, and our elder for today, who we're honoring, is Sabamya Jaugu, and he's also part of our Council of Elders for the Raising Awareness Group, and we're really glad to have him. And sir, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Not a problem. So we're just going to go over a little bit of your bio, just a brief, because I'm pretty sure you can fill in as we go along for the people who are listening. And we'll just read what we have so far, and then we can kind of fill things in as we go along when we ask you questions. Sabamya's first introduction in the struggle was in the 60s when all of our great patriots were engaging in an assortment of activities. He lived in Harlem and could listen to activists from ladders on 125th Street. That sounds familiar. That's who was the brother that was on the ladder?
It was seven. The ladder on 125th Street.
Yeah.
It was 7th Avenue,
Right.
125th Street, and there was 4 different corners.
4 different corners.
And the one that captivated me the most was the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement, because they had more content.
Okay.
But the other 3 corners was filled with different activists,
Okay.
and everybody got an audience.
Okay. So was it a lot of participation, a lot of people hearing and getting that knowledge? Yeah, I mean, I wish I was there in New York. We're from the Philadelphia area, and we didn't have that. Well, we had a little bit of it, but not as much as you guys had up here, up in Harlem and up in the big city. But yeah, our brother Sabamya was listening to the activists on 125th and 7th Avenue. Among them were Carlos Cooks, and I'm pretty sure you can elaborate on him in a minute, who also spoke on Marcus Garvey's philosophies and opinions. As a result, Sabamya joined the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement, and was an active member for over a decade. Along the way, he met and was influenced by Dr. John Henric Clarke, who had a historic impact on himself. Also, he had a distinct privilege to live in Accra, Ghana. We'll explore that some more as we get into our conversation with the brother. Nairobi, Kenya, Musoma, and Salaam in Tanzania. And this allowed the brother to learn African cultures together with some of its more traditions firsthand. After his retirement, Sabamya authored 4 websites, which he's still active right now, 3 blogs, and a newsletter. Along with writing articles for various world publications, Sabamya is engaged in writing an African manifesto that is the concept of embracing ethnicity and economic independence. And that's just basically a rundown of what you did and where you're at right now. In my conversation with you late last week, what was this week, bro? Yeah, it was this week. And we had an opportunity to build a little bit and get to know each other. You definitely mentioned the great Carlos Cooks. So I'm going to take this opportunity to ask you the first question. Just tell us about your affiliation and your tutelage and development under the great Carlos Cooks.
Well, Carlos Cooks was the administrator of the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement. Now, he was a protege of Marcus Garvey. And actually what he was teaching was Marcus Garvey's philosophies, but he interpreted as African nationalism. And basically what he dealt with is ethnicity and economic independence, because that was the day when actually we wasn't accept the fact that we're Africans, and Negro was the term that was accepted. In fact, back in the 60s, if you be called African, that would be like fighting words. So he picked up the torch for Marcus Garvey, because back in his day, Negro was written in small letters. So his initiative in the Negro world to capitalize Negro. So Mr. Cook's come along, and what he does, he had a forum to actually outlaw Negro and substitute it with black, because again, you couldn't use African.
Right.
So I'm quite sure everybody heard about buy black.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where that come from.
Okay.
It was buy black. In other words, buy from your own. And his whole premise was the way he taught us. He said, in order for us to make any significant difference, we have to control our own economy, and the money have to stay within our own communities, so that we can own the stores, the shops, and that way we won't have to beg for a job. We'll make a job.
Mm.
So I was very, very impressed. And being a member, just being a member,
Mm-hmm.
you get educated along the way. For instance, every January 1st, we celebrated what we call Freedom Day. Now, Freedom Day for an African nationalist is you celebrate two of the major conflicts in our history where we won our independence on the battlefield. Most of our people are unaware of this. Number one was Haiti in 1804.
Mm-hmm.
After a long, protracted 12-year war, the Haitians, the Africans in Haiti, won their independence on the battlefield. It wasn't given to them.
Mm.
The next is the battle in Atwa in 1896, when the Ethiopians decisively defeated the Italians. And they were the only African country to enter into the 20th century that was completely free. Now, we can't count Liberia, because Liberia is an American protectorate.
Mm-hmm.
So we learned that. And we learned to learn history from our own perspective, because the first thing we have to recognize that our education system and the very means of our culture itself does not teach us our history. They teach us the reverse, to hate ourselves. So that's my first experience with and we all call him the chief.
The chief. Okay. We'll remember that. Matter of fact, make a note of that. Make sure we call him the chief.
Is that
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish that.
you know, as it went on, all of the members embraced it. And one of the most prominent members that come out of that organization was Olombe Brath. And he created the AJAS. And that was an organization of a lot of young, beautiful African women. And what they did, they put on performances promoting natural hair.
Natural hair.
And every year we would have a natural standard of beauty contest. Because back in those days, you process your hair, you straighten your hair, you do anything but wear it nappy. And they gave shows for a couple of decades. And lo and behold, what happened is the folks in Harlem started wearing their hair natural. They started taller than the afro, and they spread it throughout the country.
Mm.
That started with Olombe Brath, AJAS. And not only that, he went on outside of that, and he influenced a lot of other people, not only here, but in Africa itself. To show you the significance of Olombe is that he was like he worked for ABC, and he was behind Gil Noble's show, Tell It Like It Is.
Okay.
Gil Noble.
Okay.
Every historian that went on that show was because of Olombe. And he had a lot of contacts with different African dignitaries. Thomas Sakura. Situ Torre. And in the Congo. In fact, in 1990, he was instrumental in having Nelson Mandela and Minnie Mandela come to Harlem. He hosted the show, in the Schomburg Library. And he also actually was instrumental in giving information to the dignitaries in Namibia. And recently, the recent president in Namibia, they invited him. He died, but they invited 5 members of his family to come over to be at his inauguration.
Okay.
And at his inauguration, there was an open seat for one of the members of the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement that was nurtured by Carlos Cooks. It was an open seat for Olombe Brath, who was an outstanding member of the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement. So it's a continual process, and that the philosophies and opinion of Marcus Garvey still continues. I had a very interesting relationship with Dr. John Henry Clarke. Now, he had a brownstone in Harlem, and this brownstone was like a library. He had libraries from the first floor all the way up to the top floor.
That's impressive. Wow. Yeah.
And he donated that library to Schomburg.
Okay.
But one of his principles that I learned from him was about the significance of Christopher Columbus. There's a lot of us just, 1492, that's the year you celebrate him. But actually, when you study the history of Columbus and before Columbus, then you find out how our social economic conditions evolved until this day. Because Columbus' second voyage was one of conquest. This is the only time in history where it was a deliberate effort to conquer another culture. Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, they commissioned him. They gave him 17 ships. They gave him ammunition, and then they gave him domesticated animals and 1,200 conquistadors. And Columbus' orders was to establish a colony, and that he did. And it all emanates from one concept that we're living under today. That's conquering. The whole Western culture, their concept is conquering. In conjunction with conquering, it is to take their victims' culture and implant it with theirs. And they found early on that if they control your culture, they can control you.
No doubt.
And the evidence is this. I'm conveying to you Africans in English.
Right, that's true.
Right?
That's right.
Now, we in the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement, way back then, we used the term African, and we were persona non grata among everybody. And the reason we used the term is because when they brought us over here, what were we? We was Africans. Now they conditioned us to be somebody else.
Right.
First, we were Negroes, right?
Right.
And Negro was a term black that was used in the Spanish culture. They just translated over and say Negro. Now, if you really want to understand African culture, you'd have to understand history. You have to go back to the very beginning in Dinka in East Africa where mankind first developed. Now, that's documented by one of their own, Dr. Leakey. He's a white Englishman. Him and his whole family spent a lifetime there documenting the fact that that's where humanity started. Now, from there, all of Africa developed. From the heart of Africa it moved up the river to the foot of the Nile, to the foot of the Nile, not the way they interpret it.
Of course, yeah.
And then kingdoms developed.
Mhm.
Africans was the first to give organized farming, domestication of animals, and catching fish in the ocean or in the sea to feed a large population. Was the first to build civilizations and kingdoms. They started off with Kush, Nubia, and Ethiopia, and the west coast, the Mandingo Empire, the Songhay Empire, and then further south, you had on the east coast the Kilwa civilization, Zimbabwe, and that was the establishment of mankind. Now, one of the most interesting things that's necessary is we have to understand three elements of history. First, you got to understand the Arab conquest. Second, you have to understand the European conquest. And then you have to understand, in conjunction, how it affects Africans. Now, the Arabs, they came in 652. And that they captured all of North Africa, all of North Africa and large parts of West Africa. Now in North Africa, they embraced that culture and they invaded the Iberian Peninsula.
You mean the Islamic or Arabic culture?
The Islamic
Okay.
Arabic culture.
And that was the Berbers?
And that was, they called them Berbers, the Amazons.
Okay.
And they crossed over in 711 AD.
No, I didn't want to cut you off, but I did want to ask you something. I did want to. Oh, well, let me ask you this, Elder. Since, and I'm glad you kind of brought up, just brought up like Islamic sides, Africans, who kind of basically did the work for the Arabs. But when you, and that's actually going to lead me to this question. From what I've heard talking to different brothers from the continent who practice Abrahamic religions, whether it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hebrew Israelite, whatever. Some of them still actually practice their spiritual systems while still under their religion. So, what I wanted to know, to the best of your knowledge, is this true? And is this a major conflict of the war of mind to live a life like that, as your ideology being, whether it's Islam, Christianity, or Judaism, but still, in some way, form, or fashion, still practice an original culture or spirituality, your tribal spirituality?
Well, in reality, when you look, you can compare that with the Catholic religion, whereas the Africans, instead of worshiping the European saints, they substitute the saints for the African Orishas, and their ceremonies is more African. So, like if you're oppressed, and the oppressor wants you to take away your culture and your ethnicity, and there are other ways of objecting it without confrontation. You can say, yes, I'm going to do that, but in that case, you don't worship their religion. You say you are, but you worship your own.
Right.
So a lot of that occurred, and then we have to understand that whenever they conquer you, the first thing they want to do, like the Arabs, the first thing they want to do, they teach you how to speak Arabic. But today, in the present day world, up in Morocco, in North Africa, the Amazons, they don't teach Arabic anymore. They teach their own culture. In fact, there is an organization up there, they specifically tell you, if you don't have something meaningful to say about their culture, don't bother to imply. So the answer to your question, it depends upon the situation. If somebody's forcing you to do something, maybe you have to disguise your activities and do what you've been doing or do what you want to do. It's like somebody's telling you, you go do this and you go do that. And you say, okay, but you don't. There's all different ways of fighting oppression, and all of it is not confrontational. I hope Is that?
Oh no, I'm writing it. I was writing it down as you were talking. No, that's excellent.
He likes to take.
Yeah, taking a little journal of our.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
But what, bro?
it's good that you mention those things, and of course you've been to the continent, you've been to various different parts. My question to you would be, how is the political structure in all the places that you visit, which is Accra, Ghana, Nairobi, Kenya,
That's Musoma.
Musoma?
And actually,
Okay.
I spent more time up in Sharadi. That's
Okay.
up in North Mara, around Lake Victoria.
Okay. So the question just is, how's the political structure, and out of the places you have visited, what would you say is the most adaptable place for Africans born in America to migrate to? Because we have a lot of people that want to migrate back home, but you have various things going on the continent, and you have language barriers. So out of the places that you visit, one, what is the political structure, and what would you say is the most adaptable place for us to migrate to and live?
Well, that's a very interesting question. To answer your question, you got a lot of Africans that's here, that's over there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a big major move. You just have to do it.
Right.
And you have to adapt. Now, number one, you have to understand that I'm going to use the term micronations,
Okay.
but tribalism is prevalent over there.
Okay.
And also, you have to understand that the culture that they adopted is not theirs. In other words, if you go to the English form of colonies,
Right.
they're going to have that system.
Right.
That system. In other words, like they're going to say, court, and then they're going to have these stupid wigs on. No, I'm
That's true. That's true.
They use. I've seen this.
Yeah, I've seen it also.
They have the cane system. When I was there, they had the cane system, and I watched how it worked. They had two young boys. I don't know what they did, but you got a choice. You can take the whip, or you can take a year. Okay. In other words, lashes.
Wow.
Now, it's a little more complicated than that.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea is it's gonna be bare bottom, and they're not gonna tie you. You have to bend over.
Wow.
And then what they do the psychological thing. You walk around and pop the whip, but they don't hit you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Then it comes down. Pow! And the guy that has the whip, you got to be very, very precise, because if you don't, he split you in two.
That's right.
They had 7 lashes. And one had 8.
Ooh.
They can do
They
a lot
took
of damage, man.
They took them. And they got up and went on.
Oh.
Wow. And I bet you they don't do whatever they did again.
Okay,
That's
now,
memorable.
if you want to know about the real deal, don't get caught stealing over there.
Now, which part are you talking about?
I'm talking about Africa. I'm talking about Mexico.
Okay.
Because they will stone you to death.
Okay.
Probably.
To death.
Okay.
Okay. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, that's well, actually, what about the political structure though?
The political structure is based upon narcissism
Okay.
and self-greed.
Okay.
In other words, it's getting better, but most people. Let me explain something to you. Like, over there it's completely different. If you go to the post office and you want to do a simple thing, buy a stamp, it might take you all day.
Wow.
Because once they get the political job, they don't do nothing.
Wow.
Okay? And the politics, once you get into politics, not all, but most of them, graft is galore.
Mhm.
It's abundant, even today.
Mhm.
And like today, if I mean, it's completely different. Like if some places, if you get a construction person to come in and build you something,
Mhm.
and they put bricks and whatever it is,
Mhm.
there'd be more sand than bricks. You can take your fist and put it through the brick, boom.
Wow.
And then other places they do the correct thing. But right now it is people are fighting for what they deserve.
Mhm.
So it is not cut and dry here.
Mhm.
If you go there right away, if you come here, you're gonna look for a flushing toilet and hot water.
Right.
Well, most places they don't have. Like if you go out up countries, they don't have that.
Right.
But when you go into the city, they do. So it's complex. So there's no one answer.
Okay.
There's no one answer. You can say in Africa, most people say Africa, but there's 54 different countries in Africa.
Right.
And each one have their own culture.
Right.
And each one have their own way of doing things.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I was just really just marginalizing just to the areas you visited. Yeah.
Okay, in East Africa, Nairobi, when I was there, it was the most developed country in all of Africa. There was paved streets, and everywhere you go, downtown Nairobi was one of the most magnificent cities in the world. And when you go downtown, it's just like any place else in the world, if you have money. But when you go up country and you live with the folks and you mingle with the folks, it's completely different. And when you speak over there, you have to have at least know Swahili.
Okay.
Because in Tanzania, if you go up country, even if they speak English, they ain't gonna speak it to you.
Okay.
They're gonna tell you, see, Jewy, police on that kind of thing. In Kenya, they would speak it. If you go to a French colony, they speak French.
Right.
You know, and to answer your question, all the government, most of them there is corrupt. And to the extent that they actually lean toward the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. These are the institutions. You have to adjust to them because of their structural adjustment programs.
Once you take some money from them, you're in debt with them for life.
Wow.
And then, let me explain to you how it works. The instruction, that's from the International Monetary Fund, that actually became evident after World War II. So what they did, it was a very brilliant part of the Western culture perspective, because they had made the biggest blunder in the annals of history. Now they tell you about World War II being a war between axis of evil and we fighting for democracy.
Okay.
Well, you know, common sense to tell you that that is not true. That they was fighting for the raw resources. Japan wanted the resources from Asia that the British and the English had. Okay, and what the Germans wanted,
And the Italians
yeah, and the Italians, they wanted the resources from Africa.
from Africa.
So, in this presentation, I explained to you exactly what happened. All of the English colonies, the British colonies, you know, whatever it is, they went to the college and said, okay, look, we're going to need you to serve for your colonies. And after the war, what we're going to do, we're going to free you.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, this is after France, England, and all of them have been destroyed by the Germans. Okay? So now, they fought. In fact, they did the fighting because England didn't have any army. They just sent the officers. The same thing with France and the rest of them. Their army was decimated. They called help from their stepchild in America. They all came together, right? And they won. Boom. And to make matters worse, de Gaulle didn't want the African troops to march in the parade in Paris.
Wow.
And even when you look back on the American soldiers, the Africans, and I use the term Africans because the Africans describe the Africans in Africa and the ones in the diaspora, we all one group. We don't accept that, but if we do, we'd be better off for it because we can act as one unified forum as opposed to say you black and you African. That's called divide and conquer. And that's why they're able to actually manipulate us because they got us in different barrels. And how hard it is to shoot a fish in a barrel. It's not. You just go to a barrel. Boom, 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 boom. But what happened if the fish is open in the open sea? Well, anyway, the war was over, and they went and they tried to establish themselves again, and they got pushed back. And that's when the Africans said, look, you showed us you couldn't even perform in the war, so why could you put me, why should I be your colony? In the 1960s, what happened? One by one, all of the African countries decided that they were going to be free. So what did they do? They said, okay, what you're going to need, because you're going to need development. So that's what the International Monetary Fund is for. So what we're going to do, we're going to loan you some money and help you build bridges and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was they established the structural adjustment programs.
Mm.
They said, well, if you want this money, you got to adhere to the structural adjustment programs. They said, we're going to send these people to help you. And those people is the same thing as colonialism.
Mm.
They go and they take over all of your, first they take the utilities, and they give you this hard interest, and they can't pay the interest. So that's how they control you, the countries. And it's very, very sad, because like, when you're dealing with the monetary system, this monetary system, the United States and Western culture is based upon fiat.
Right.
Fiat is nothing.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is that Africans have over 55% of the world's supply of gold.
Right, correct.
So if gold's based upon money, why are you borrowing it in the first place?
Right.
When you have what it takes to back it up.
That's what it takes to back it up.
It used to be backed on gold, but now it's really backed on what they think you're going to produce out of in life, in production level. Mm-hmm.
And how we'll be controlled is we don't control our raw resources. See, with the ethnicity is one thing, but the most important thing is raw resources. And even here in the Western culture, we spend, it goes through our hand, $1.1 trillion every year. 1 trillion. And what do we have to show for it? In Africa, 37% of the raw resources, I'm going to give you one country, out of the Congo, 37%. In Katanga province, you have everything. And that's among the poorest country in the world. Now, let's just take one product, bauxite. Bauxite is what they use to make aluminum.
Okay.
What about the aluminum industry? You take Guinea has 25% of the world's supply of bauxite. They don't have one processing factory there.
Wow.
Now, let's just say for the sake of this conversation, if they would take that and instead of exporting it and getting a little bit of money, keep it there and develop an aluminum factory, or if you can send it, charge them more money. If you develop an aluminum factory, there's things that go along with that. You got to build a building. That means there's the building industry, mm-hmm. right? And then you got to employ people. Mm-hmm. And then once you make your own products, then you got to market it. Then once you market it, you got to build trucks. And you have to do this. And what is that? That is employment. And that's how you build wealth. That's how America build wealth. That's how all countries build wealth. Right. That's how South Korea built wealth. Right. From after World War II, that was an agricultural country, right? And they decided what we're going to do? Well, we're going to industrialize, mm-hmm. right? And they industrialize. And what they do? They build factories. They build roads. They give employment to everybody else because they control their resources.
Right.
We don't do that. You take oil out of Nigeria. They send crude oil out, and they process it. And then when you take it to the pump, you got to pay an extravagant price from the oil that comes out of there. Does that make any sense?
No. One of the points that you made, well, actually made a couple of points, was that we need to own our own infrastructure. We had to start from our own manufacturing. We had to own the industries and have an active role that we play in the industries. And you're familiar with the works of University of Kemet Press and Takar Kilimanjaro and Yara and Dr. Ife Kilimanjaro in their books, Bop 2, that tell you how the financial economic history of the United States, how it goes all the way through. It goes in perfect detail what you just said about how they did all that, how they industrialized, how they mechanized, how they did everything. And once they didn't need us anymore, for each phase of the country's development, they used us. Okay, once the factories got mechanized, they got computerized, then they didn't need us anymore. But to go back to your premise, the industries have to be owned and controlled by us. There's no doubt about that. What it shows perfectly well in University Chemist Press, what must be done. It tells you exactly what you need to do. We had to have a scientific approach to what we need to do. Our greatness is important to know and understand, and in order for us to grab the greatness that we used to have, we need to own the industry. We had to control the industry, and we had to be professionals in that particular industry. We had to get smart again, and that's basically. But my daughter, who's down in Dominica on a Peace Corps mission, I was there, and I went down to. Well, she went down to the post office to get a package, like what you had mentioned. And I think because of the lack of opportunity, the fact that we don't own anything, even though that country is all black, it's highly, I think it's like 95% Christian on that island. Not that makes a difference, but the only industry there is tourism or government jobs. So when they have just like you said, when they get a government job, they're in there for life. Their friends, their family, are the ambassadors, the district attorneys, the lawyers, all that kind of stuff. Once they're in there, you got to use the jaws of life to get them out of there. But she went down to try to get a package out that we sent her. It took her 2 months to get that package. So it's going to be very difficult for us to come out of this needy mindset that we're in. It's like when we get the opportunity to make a little money, to make our life more comfortable, we see the opportunity in political jobs, government jobs, and we jump there. But to go back to your premise, instead of doing that, instead of looking for handouts, instead of trying to find the easy way out, we just need to learn how to control the industries. And what makes it even worse is that when you're in a country that's owned, that's ran and everything by black people, but the colonization, the cultural re-engineering, the spiritual re-engineering is complete, and the Europeans have done a fantastic job. How does micronations, when you're dealing with the micronation, the tribal mindset of our people in Africa and other countries, does that play a role? Are we suffering from? Do we have a micronation psychosis here in the United States?
Let me put it to you this way. We've been conditioned to think a certain way that's counterproductive to our own progress. Mm-hmm. When you're born, it starts from when you're born and it goes all the way back to slavery. And in order to do that, I don't want to oversimplify it, but it don't require brain surgery. What we have to do is 2 elements that we have to address. First, we have to recognize we lost our ethnicity. You have to recognize it.
Yes.
And then you have to determine what I'm going to do about it. Okay? The first thing is in my view, it sounds simple. It's just like it's a continuation of the Honorable Marcus Garvey said, well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to capitalize Negro. Then Carlos Cooks come along and say, okay, well, Negro has served its purpose, so what we're going to do, well, instead of using Negro, in lieu of the fact we can't use African, what we're going to say black. Now is the time to say, okay, black have outlived its usefulness. Let's just be Africans unapologetically. We don't have to explain. No other ethnic group explain.
Yeah, that's true.
No other ethnic group say, well, I'm brown. So we say, look, we're Africans and let it go. And then what we have to do, we have to recognize that there's nothing wrong with being homogeneous. They tell you the idea, oh, you can't do that because, that's not politically correct. But they do it. They do everything. Their culture, they have a mindset that they're going to rob you. They have a mindset that they're going to conquer you. And whatever you got, they're going to take. And they're going to give you their interpretation of ethnicity, how it's supposed to be, which means they're on top and you're on the bottom. So how do you change that? In order to solve a problem, you have to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how smart you are, if you don't understand the problem, you're not going to start it. And what we have to do is learn our history from our own perspective.
Let me stop you right there, and I'll let Kufu and Afrikaners pop in here for a minute. Because you bring up some interesting concepts. How does people like us, we run into this phenomenon all the time. We're on Facebook. We have contacts with people who are not there yet. I guess the question is will they ever be there, but that's not neither here nor there. The ones that I want to talk about are the ones who are in this, Caesar Borgia, Christianity, Islamic, Muhammad, Abrahamic mindset, and no matter what they do, they just cannot let that go. We know the indoctrination has been so complete. Do you have any thoughts, or ways that maybe are they lost? In other words, is what I'm trying to say. Are they lost, or can we reach them? In your mind, what do you think?
Well, actually, you're not going to reach everybody.
Okay.
And any major accomplishment is never done by the masses anyway. Most people follow.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing that I'm expounding here is to garner enough support behind embracing ethnicity and economic independence. And understanding that in order for us to be successful, the Africans have to be successful.
Yes.
And by that I mean they have to take control of their resources from the beginning to the end, not only on top of the ground, but underneath the ground. Like if they take the cocoa, cocoa makes chocolate.
Right.
There's no cocoa factories here or in Europe.
That's true.
Right?
Right.
So something is wrong.
Right.
And you have to understand that the African farmers need help from when you say micronations, I like to think in terms of African nations to actually circumvent this scramble for Africa, the partition of Africa, where each African country is not strong enough.
Right.
But they don't have to become a United States of Africa. What they have to do is form themselves into consortiums to doing certain things. I like to call them big Africans. In other words, like if you take the country, like you take a country like the Congo, and say, okay, what we're gonna do? We're gonna do the agriculture for all of Africa, the Congo, the Zambia, and the Ivory Coast. They can feed all of Africa and have a surplus to send out to the world. And when you start doing stuff like that, that means you got to build an infrastructure. You got to build highways. You got to have trucks. You got to have trains.
Yes.
And what is that? That's jobs.
Yeah.
Now somebody, everything's not lost.
Okay.
The most richest African there is African by the name of Dangote. He's out of Nigeria and he's dealing with cement.
Okay.
He's selling cement to India.
Mm.
So the Africans that's doing something significant, we don't hear about it in the Western press. And in Uganda, they have a car that they made from ground up.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
Ground up.
Mm-hmm.
So what did that mean? That means we started. So what happened? Okay, well we do the localized, the nationalized thing. and I'm waiting for them to open up a showroom over here, like a Fiat or whatever, I will buy a car, an African car.
Right.
We're not all lost.
No.
There are a lot of people that's doing some things that are meaningful. You're not going to get that on the Western media.
Right.
So, the answer is, no, we're not lost. They want us to think that we're lost. You know, if you watch the television and what they give you, we're lost. But what we have to do, we have to network with people with like minds. And they're out there. And once you do that, then you forge, let's say for this conversation, like the African Manifesto is very simplistic. All you have to do is embrace African ethnicity and African economic determination. You can be anything, any organization. The ones that you mentioned, as long as you embrace your African ethnicity, as long as you're going to come together to help economic development, then that's the African Manifesto. You can be whatever you want to be. They did it that way. They didn't have an organization. They didn't have a conquering committee and said, okay, we're going to conquer the world. Did they have that? No.
No.
They fought amongst each other. But they all understood one thing. Well, after the fight's over, we're going to go back to conquering. Right?
Right.
They all go, well, I want more. They said, no, you're not going to get that because I'm going to steal over there.
Yeah, they drew those lines
Yeah, that's
across
okay.
the map.
That's it. Okay, I
You
tell you
got
what.
this, I got
You
that.
get this,
yeah,
I got.
yeah.
But what did they agree upon? What? Conquering.
Right.
And the next thing, well, you know, you got to take the ethnicity, right? And so here it is, Christianity. That's the deal. So
There it
what
is.
do? Reverse it.
One of the things that Afrikaners brought up in our last interview with your brother Olatunji was that Nigeria was a very rich country with a lot of oil, and you brought that country up, and I can't help but notice that any country that has any form of economic viability, independence, always has this undercurrent of ISIS and Boko Haram and all those different terrorist organizations,
Kidnapping girls,
and all those kind of things. And and there's a reason why they're concentrating in Nigeria, because Nigeria is a very, very rich area, very, very rich country. Although they have their separations, they have their issues, the political issues and stuff. But the people who are in the know globally, the elite, they know that their area is something that they need to destabilize. And what our people need to know there is that they just can't allow themselves to be destabilized. That's just the bottom line. So, but yeah, we had to worry about that right now here because we still have a long way to go to reach that level of economic viability. But I hear you talking.
Well, this initiative is not going to be easy because our adversaries do not sleep. And you think that they're going to give up what it took them 500 years to get, and they're going to help you? Forget it. I mean, they smile at you, they sleep with you, they do anything, but at the end of the day,
It's because Afrikaners, when he's on his radio show, man, he be dropping the bombs, man.
Yeah.
He said they be sleeping with you, and the thing is that we think because they sleep with us that we have this equality, man. Everything we rob, man. No, don't get it twisted. Because they sleeping with you, man. That don't mean nothing.
don't mean nothing. So you understand, they got that one concept.
Yeah.
And the thing about us, first of all, a lot of us think that things is just going to happen if you don't make it happen. And a lot of us is being misdirected. And a lot of us is being controlled by the marketing scheme of buying everything. And a lot of us just don't have any character.
No.
Overall.
Yeah.
So,
Overall.
I mean, let's talk about
spade a spade.
So,
Lack of
but
character,
there are some of us, although it may be, it's probably a lot more than we think. A lot of us want to do the right thing, but there's no forum to do the right thing in, so you just live your life.
Right.
But there's a lot of us, like sitting here in this room, that really want to do something. So it's up to each and every one of us, because we have something now that we haven't had before. We got communications where you could reach out.
Right.
And give out a positive message and then do something with it. and if, let's say from my point of view, the only thing I'm expounding is ethnicity. Accept the fact of what you are. Learn your history, and whatever you are, do something positive to help economically. Instead of thinking about getting a job, let's think about pooling our money to start, let's say, a trucking line. And then if from there, something else. And then we have to reach out and realize that it's just not us. We're not the only ones victims. You got more than twice as many Africans in Brazil than you have here.
That's right.
And they fighting the same struggle, because I know. You got the third largest population of Africans beside America is in Colombia.
Colombia.
I thought it was Brazil.
That's Colombia.
Brazil is the first.
Brazil's okay. All right. Brazil's
United
on
States is second.
But then Colombia.
And then Colombia.
Okay.
I mean, you know, just to finish up with that, Brother Cooper's question, what countries do you feel as though Africans born here in America, if they wanted to go back to the continent, which would you
Where would you
recommend?
go?
Yeah, what would you recommend? Just maybe like 2 or 3, if you could, 1, 2, or 3, maybe you could
Well,
recommend.
If it was me, I would go to Ghana.
Ghana.
And or I would go to Botswana. Botswana is a small country inside of South Africa, a little bit bigger than Texas. But they are progressive, and they work for the people. And they are among the few African countries where their living standard is raising. It's going up.
Okay.
Because they sit there and they figure out how they're going to help the people. They're progressive. You don't hear that much about them because they're progressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, since you brought up, you did bring up certain South Central American countries, like, you know, blacks in Brazil, blacks in Colombia, and I want you to, I don't know if you are aware, but there is a group of people whom are creating an entire history about American black people, African blacks, excuse me, that they did not come from the continent of Africa, and that their origins are more so Mexico, North America. What would you have to say to these people who actually are believing in this type of ideology? Because it's a small group. It's not a large group. I'm not going to say there's millions of people, but I'm going to say it's a small group. These are more so people who have been indoctrinated under Native American, Indian, Mongoloid cultural heritage, maybe due to their partnership. Some people may call it enslavement. But they feel as though that they are, as far as a race of people, they are not genetically or blood relationship to a continental African tribe. What would you have to say to these people who believe in this?
Well, a person's belief depends upon what they want to believe. I can't say anything to them. The only thing is, if you understand, like if you know 1 and 1 is 2, if somebody tells you that 1 is 18, what would you tell them?
I would probably just allow them to continue to believe that they think it's 18, because obviously I'm not going to get through to them to think that 1 and 1 is 2. If it's clear as day, if I took one of these game ships and this game ship and put it together, I have 2. So if I can't force them to believe, it's not forced, but if I can't make them believe that 1 and 1 is 2, and if they want to believe that it's 18, I guess we may just have to part ways.
Yeah, I say when you understand that it's not only, it's been established that mankind started in Africa. So if you're going to do a rebirth thing in Africa, and then somebody tell you that you started somewhere in Kingdom Come, what would you tell them?
Me personally, I would ask them to prove it, but
No, you don't ask them. You deal in somebody that mind's made up and they have false premise. You're wasting your time.
right.
Well, you with me 100%, because I always say all the time when I run into people like that, I don't waste my time dialoguing.
Because you have to pick and choose who you're going to teach or who you can reach.
Right. Every once in a while, I'll get family members, and will hit me up, and these family members are very religious,
Okay.
and without saying any names, I had a couple of family members hit me up in the inbox and was very curious about the stuff that I post, the things that I profess, the things that I believe, and all those kind of things. And so those are the ones that I kind of concentrate on. As long as they continue to have a dialogue with me and want to continue to get information, that's what I do.
Okay.
The other ones, they continue to, nobody has unfriended me, let's put it like that.
Okay.
So apparently they're still curious.
Okay.
But, I've had this conversation. We've had this conversation in the group, in our own inbox, and we talk about that. Sometimes you just gotta let it go.
I learned that from William Kareem. He's a Muslim brother. And he said, he said some of my folks you just can't reach.
And while you're on kind of piggybacking off what he just asked you, and we talk about scholarship a lot in our group. How do you feel about the current state of African historical scholarship, and is there any information you feel that is currently outdated?
Okay, when you say scholarship, could you?
As far as information that we have, as far as books, information, just facts and data.
Archaeological, anthropological, historic, scientific evidence.
Okay, well, actually, when you deal with that, you have to be knowledgeable enough to know what's true and what's not true, because it's a deliberate effort to give you misinformation, to distort it, to omit it, and not to give it to you at all.
Right.
So, but once you understand, you get your foundation together, you'll be able to make that determination.
Mm-hmm.
See, like if because everybody tells their history from their own perspective.
Okay.
We're the only ones that allow other people to tell us our history, and we believe what they say.
Right.
So actually, what you have to do, you have to set your own standards. You have to educate yourself to a level where you can make the determination whether it's valid or not.
Right.
So if somebody tell you, well, 8 and 8 is not 16, then you say, yeah, okay, fine. Or if they say 16, then you can go ahead and proceed.
Okay.
But the scholar that's a European term.
Okay.
Because I have a good friend, Olombe.
Okay.
He was teaching at Columbia University in New York. He didn't have no degree because what he had was important.
Mm-hmm.
So like they tell you that in order for you to accomplish in anything, you got to have a degree.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Marcus Garvey didn't have no degree.
Right.
Malcolm X, did he have a degree?
No.
So who told you that?
And then we deal with people who have degrees who are completely just asinine with their information.
Hey, that's what you said.
Exactly.
And you know what? One thing, one of our greatest scientists of our era, Dr. Diop, said this, and it's right there in one of your books in your library. The history of the black African will remain suspended in air, and it cannot be written correctly until an African historian is there to connect it with our ancient history. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing. We need to see things through our African binders and stop allowing white supremacists and white academia to tell us, because normally it's only going to go to 1492. There's
That's
nothing
right.
to him, nothing surpassed 1492.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Because he did great work together with Ivan Van Sertima.
yes.
But the second part to my question is, do you feel that there is any information right now that is outdated?
Well, it depends upon what you're referring to. And then
I could be talking about just books, or I could be talking about any data or information pertaining to anything relative to Africans historically. A number of things. But that's why I use the term information.
Okay. Well, actually, their due digs and finds are found every day.
Okay.
So if you find something that actually, reflects the fact that what you found previously
Mm-hmm.
is outdated.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a it's a trick question, really, because like things are evolving all the time.
Yes.
And then by the way, when you go to to the museums,
Mhm.
especially the one in London,
Mhm.
and they show you all this stuff in London, which is great, right? But the real stuff, they show the procurators. You got to pay to go see it. And the reason I learned that, my good friend Ludlow Bailey, he's the only African curator in the world, because he sells stuff for $300,000-$400,000. He's in Miami. So he goes and he gets in, and he was telling me, down there in that basement, they got stuff there that will baffle your mind. So if they have it in London, I'm quite sure they have it in other museums already. And what we got to understand is, I know for a fact though, I'm going off the beaten book.
Okay.
And in Mexico, they found something in that Museo region. That's where the Olombe heads. They put it in the basement, and they ain't showing nobody. They tell you, yeah, it's there.
Okay.
So what did that tell you? That tell you that they're still fighting this war to destroy us, and everybody else is against them. So we cannot allow. We have to be, and we got to be open-minded and understanding that we have an adversary that don't sleep.
He sits in think tanks constantly, where we don't. That's one thing in my estimation, a lot of us, think tanks are good.
Yeah.
Me per se, one of my solutions is that small, like you said, in study team or some study organizations, a lot of what we need to do is start getting together on smaller individual bases. It could be a group of 5, it could be 10, it could be 15, it could be 20, but we need to group up. But all the groups have a same common goal and ideology that we will stick by, and methodology. But we need to get back to small groups, like you said, micro groups, all with the same common goal, and use the same methodology to build, and maybe agree to meet up maybe once a week, whatever, but something consistently. Keep it consistently. If you say we're going to meet on the first of every month, or the first Friday of every month, or the last Sunday of every month, whatever, but consistently agree on that date and meet up on that day, and basically brothers deal with each other, bring new information, solutions to problems that we're consistently having. Until we and I think that's one small way we can start doing it. They do it politically every week. Politicians do it every week, whether they're just sitting back laughing and joking and shooting whatever and eating and having nice catered food or whatever, but they're doing it. They're still getting together and they're organized. They still organize and they believe in the belief system of doing it. Just like when you're a Boy Scout, it's the same thing. You get up every Saturday morning in the church basement or whatever, but you still agree with it. But we have to do that on more of a sophisticated level, because I think a lot of brothers, we just not used to just sitting down and talking to each other anymore. Even in the family, families don't communicate at a greater level anymore.
You know, what you said is so important. Because like we sitting here, and when we're discussing something, a synergy going to come in, and it's going to come, and something is going to come that none of us thought about.
That's right.
So, what you said, if you come, and you got to have a purpose, you have to have a concept. That if you sit around and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. How can I help me and my family? How can I help my community? What can I do to make an impact, to enhance my legacy? Positive thing. And then do it. Because see, talk is the cheapest form of commodity there is. The only thing is required is the mere expenditure of the breath. Once you come together, you have to put forth some action. See, we do a lot of talking.
That's true.
And we have to curtail some of this negative behavior, because if we don't, they're gonna be successful and kill us all.
Very, very, very interesting. Just take a step back. We got a lot of information out of you as far as a lot of good. Well, you say you don't like the term scholarship. What term do you prefer? I don't.
What, excuse me?
You say you didn't like the term scholarship. You said it's a European term.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I said we have to understand it.
Okay.
What it is.
Okay.
Scholarship is a term.
Right, right.
They sell us that, oh, you can't do anything until you go to college and get a degree.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And that's how or you can win a scholarship. I'm not saying that don't do that.
Okay.
You
Okay.
can multitask. There's no one way to do things.
Right.
You get a scholarship and do great.
Right.
And what I want you to understand, you can still do great without getting a scholarship.
Oh yeah. No,
Okay?
no.
One thing to piggyback on your statement right there, and also Elder and Koo brought it up, African Time, Volume 1 by University of Kenya Press. He brought that up after slavery was supposed to have been over. Really, it was about the industrial era. He talked about the industrial era when slave labor or manual labor, once it became useful, the usefulness of slave labor, manual labor in the industry became mechanical labor. Mainly what happened was Africans, stolen, kidnapped Africans here in America, were the best at pretty much everything. Welding, stone cutting, manufacturing, smelting iron, steel, crafting, anything you can name, they were the best at. But what happened with the industrial industry is when they started putting labels on these job titles, and they had to pay these literally underpaid, work to death, 70-hour-a-week workers, and they basically just said, we're not going to pay these blacks this type of money because they commanded a salary, and they basically bought in this ideology of a degree. Oh, you have to have a degree now. But you were clearly the most skilled laborer or the most skilled individual for that job. If you were worked in a factory that basically worked in a steel mill, we were the best educated and skillful, experienced workers. But they didn't want to pay us whatever the commanding price a pay rate. So then they bought it this degree ideology, and that's how the whites consumed the jobs. And left a lot of brothers basically out of jobs, out of work. C.P. Patterson, that happened to him, who basically came up with the concept of the car, the automobile. That happened to him. And Henry Ford had a knack for hanging around engineers in the South and stole his concept. And he realized he had the funds to basically make mass productions of automobiles. That's really the story. But just to piggyback off what you were saying about the degree, and when we talk about scholarship and the importance of it, it's nice to have the degree, especially for blacks, because a lot of us worked so hard because it was something we couldn't have. We weren't allowed to read anything but the Bible. There's no scholarship in the Bible, But to get an education, and I can understand why my brother wanted to get it, to get that out of you, to get an understanding of the importance of a scholarship, and because most blacks weren't even allowed to read. So getting to college, and I say this a lot, Elder knows I say this a lot, how black colleges started here in America from basically throwing away books from the major universities. Brothers, went to school and bought back those books that they just threw away and built a library in the community. And most of those libraries turned into black colleges here in America. That's all. And that's probably what my brother wants to.
Yeah, but that's fine. I don't misconstrue. I'm not saying don't. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you have to have an open mind, and don't think just because you don't have a scholarship that you don't have worth.
Good point.
Well, when I speak of scholarship, I speak from a more generalized term.
Bill Gates don't have a scholarship.
Good point.
Well, do he?
He didn't finish college,
No, not at all. Not at all.
So that's what I'm expounding upon you. If you can't, by all means, if you can get it, you get it. Don't party with it. Do something with it. But if you can't get it, don't think that the world has come to an end, because it's not. You still got opportunity. You can make your own destiny. The evidence is my nephew had. He don't have a scholarship, but he has a health spa down in the village, and he's making pretty good. He don't have a scholarship, and he's not worried about it. If he can do it, you can do it, or anybody else can do it, and you can do it with or without the scholarship. It's not about the scholarship; it's about you and what you want to accomplish.
Absolutely.
Someone with a scholarship, one of us, ruined the movement, Mr. Du Bois. So when you look at someone, we talk about people with scholarship. So look at what he did. He works. Elder said he wrote some of the most brilliant works of our time. But what he did to Marcus Garvey was just unconscionable. in his efforts.
Yeah.
You know,
He worked out of the crisis. And Marcus Garvey had the Negro world. Yeah, but that's it. He was always talking bad against the Honorable Marcus Garvey. But you know.
That's the danger of this European-centered scholarship, European-centered education, is that when you get that, especially when you reach an advanced degree, master's, PhD, doctorate, you have a tendency to think that you're this special being because you reach this level of scholastic scholarship or scholastic level of education. And that's a prime example. W.E.B. Du Bois. He said it. He said Marcus Garvey has no. He's dumb. He's like an ape. He's a gorilla. He has no education. He shouldn't be leading the movement. I don't understand why people follow him. He was drunk in egotism, and that's what happens when you have people. Not everybody gets like that, you know what I mean. But there are. I can name some more examples of people who are alive right now who have PhDs and doctorates, and you can tell they have this elitist attitude, and they're just drunk on ego.
Okay, let me give you another example. In colonialism, what they do, and even now, they take the brightest of the Africans and they send them to Europe, London, France, and the United States, and they condition them and they send them back and it's okay, you're the president now.
That's true.
Right?
Garvey.
Okay? So, well, what are they thinking? The president is thinking European, Western culture.
He's thinking like me.
Yeah. So
He's my stepchild now.
it's a reflection. So the reflection is quite obvious. Who controls the raw resources in Africa now? You're supposed to be free, right? Not one country have a commodity that's developed, that's distributed and manufactured, that's global. Not even a toothpick. But all that raw resources because of what? Education.
Education.
And we talk about colonialism and kind of follow the narrative, and we talking about colonialism and conquering of African nations, and we always going to come across Western religion and how that was an important factor to instill colonialism on those African nations. Now, there are some people that believe that, one, we should definitely get rid of Western religions. I'm a firm believer in that. But there's also people that also believe that African spirituality is an outdated concept. What is your perspective on that? And some people believe we should get rid of African spirituality altogether and maybe come up with a new system based on the information that we have available today. I know it's a very shaky question, which I'm asking you, but what do you feel about that? Because most people feel like even if you're still practicing African spirituality, you're still in that some of the paradigms of religion in its totality.
Well, first of all, it's not a stupid question.
Okay.
No question is stupid. Okay, if you don't know something, the only way you gotta ask it.
Right.
I said when you're dealing with religion, somebody else's religion, it's not a religion. It's a tool that they use to control you.
Correct.
And you know, the Africans gave up their religions, and they gave up everything they had for their religion. What they get in return? So when they first, you know who told me this? It was a Greek. I was working with this Greek. His name was Michael Galadoulis. And he said, when the white man came to Africa, the only thing he had was the Bible. And he said, Africans have the Bible, and he have everything that the Africans own. A Greek told me that. So how do you think they did it? They come in and what they do? The missionaries. What do you think the missionaries do? They condition your mind.
Right.
It has nothing to do with Christianity. Let's not get confused with religion.
Right.
They're using that as a tool.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what you embrace.
Right.
As long as you embrace your in ethnicity.
Right.
And back then, all of the kingdoms and whatever it is, nobody starved.
Mm.
There was no welfare lines.
Right.
And
No
we did
jails.
quite well, right?
Right.
And we don't need anybody to explain to us how to live because we know how.
Right.
But they condition you to think, though, you cannot live without us.
Right.
Right? You got to come, and I need your counsel.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And they give you the counsel. At the same time, they rob you.
Right.
So getting back to your question, it's not a matter of religion or spirituality. It's a matter upon the concept of the person that's embracing it.
Mm.
So if you're going to embrace, let's say, African spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to embrace your African ethnicity, and at the same time you say, well, I'm going to make sure I'm going to take care. You see these cocoa those plants? And so what we're going to do, we're going to take the cocoa, and we're going to take it, and we're going to dry it out, and then we're going to process it and make cocoa, and we're going to sell it to people. Nothing to do with religion.
Okay.
Everything has to do with survival. No matter what you believe in, you're going to have to figure out a way to make money to feed your family.
Right.
That's economics.
Food,
Right.
clothes, and shelter.
So once you cover that, in which we're not at this time,
Right.
we're going to always have the same problem.
Right.
The problem is ethnicity
Mhm.
and economic independence.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to know right now, if you say, well, I want to buy something that an African made, we'd have a hard time.
That's correct.
We'd have a hell of a hard time. So, well, you go to the malls. In Africa, the same place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you buy a car, what is it, a Toyota, whatever it is, it's just here recently that the Africans with conscious mind said, yo, let's make our own. You got to make one. You got to make a new one in Nigeria, one is in Ghana, one is in Uganda. Right? And we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if we keep doing the same thing, we're gonna get the same results.
Wow.
Now, if we want change, then we're gonna have to promulgate prominent change, do something different.
Mm-hmm.
So far, we're not.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they give you a new wrinkle. Oh well, about what, civil rights and social acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Right.
Civil rights and social acceptance. You sit right next to them, but they still got the privileges. They still got the money, right?
Right.
You know, if whatever the religion is, if we don't take care of our own ethnicity and develop our own economic economies, we're gonna suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Just to change up a little bit, you've lived on the continent a long time, and when you're talking about cultural aspects, you know, I eat food, you know, songs and dance. Firstly, you can tell I love to eat. Talk to us about the cultural aspects as far as relations, the common theme that you may have seen in relations to what was similar with a lot of the different tribes and in the countries. What was it? Was there a common theme as far as food, dance, culture there was consistency? And just talk to us about the foods, the cuisines in Africa. Talk to us
There's no
about that.
cuisines. Like if you were in, let's say, if you were in Tanzania, they're gonna eat ugali, man.
What's ugali? What's that?
It's something like hominy grits that you throw out.
It's essentially grits.
Yeah, it's essential. It's a
But it's a ball.
Yeah,
They
you
ball
boil
it
it,
up.
you put gravy in it. Sometimes they call it chuzi, and you get meat. You eat it. In Kenya, there's a thing called idio,
Idio.
but that's nice. Like a vegetable thing. Now, if you go to Ethiopia, that's completely different.
Well, what was the best food you ate? Where? What was the best cuisine you ate there? If you had to say, where? What was the best food you
Where I would like to eat?
ate? Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think he's getting hungry. Like,
No,
actually.
no. What happened
He
is,
started licking those lips.
Yeah, Sonny was thinking about it. He's like, damn. He said, wait a minute, I had that grits, but wait a minute, I forgot about that veggie dish. Wait a minute. Hold up.
it'd probably be Ethiopia.
Ethiopia.
Because they have this bread that they make, and then they put all kinds of stuff in it, and you can put anything you want in it.
What's that restaurant we went to?
It's a Sinhalese restaurant.
Kilimanjaro?
Kilimanjaro.
Okay,
That's Sinhalese.
That's Sinhalese.
Yeah, it's a place in West Philly we like to eat, but it's Sinhalese. Now let me ask you this: what's like as far as meats? What's the meat quality? And do continental Africans eat a lot of meats there?
No.
It's really.
If they eat, they'll eat. In other words, like we get the impression every night we change it.
Right, right.
No, it don't work that way, man. You might get meat once a month or 3 times a week.
And they're not eating that processed by the meat at the store kind of meat.
No.
They get it out of the field.
Where I was, they said, you want a chicken? That's okay.
Go out there and get it.
They
Go get it.
run the chicken down.
Yeah.
Pop the neck and you feather the thing.
Yeah.
If you want eggs, they go around.
Right there, yeah.
I'm a rice eater. What's the rice like there? Like, do they have jasmine, more like a sticky white
No, they
Asian
don't
rice?
have rice.
That's not popular.
They won't have rice.
They don't have rice.
Not where I was. They have ugali, man.
That's more grains.
The grain, the cereal. Are they still eating more cereal style
Yeah.
meals?
Well, you see, it depends upon the adaptation.
Mm.
Like in the city, you get anything you want. You got the money.
Of course.
But I'm talking about when you are up country, you know. And then
Or
back
rural
then,
area.
I shared this with you. In the 70s, the English have their class system. That went for everything, even for the prisons. You got 3 classes. You have white, Arab, and African. And you know how the order go? White
White
is
at
number
the top,
1,
Right.
Arab is
in the
number
middle.
2, and African is number 3. And that's for the prisoners also.
Wow.
You know, I remember in Philly, I used to eat at this Pakistani restaurant. There's one in West Philly too, but the main one was in down Temple University, and it was the same guy. When I bumped into him again, and lamb was, it was like a lot of lamb and rice. That was the common theme. Lamb and rice was the common theme there, and you would buy a nice sized platter there maybe for like $9. $9, and it was a lot of meat, ton of rice, a vegetable, and the pita bread. But the funny thing that he told me, he was like, "I'm gonna tell you something," and I was like, "What's up?" And he was like, "In my country, this is a poor man's meal." He said, "This is what the poor eat. I came to this country, and this is a delicacy, and people buy this hand over fist, and I'm making plenty of money off of it." But he's like, "In my country, literally, this is what the poor, like the desolate, he was like, people like how, he was like, how Americans, he was like, you see how Americans stand in line when that truck opened up?" Basically, he was talking about those, the world food, the giveaway food. That's what he was saying. He was like, "This is what the poor made. But I come here in this country, and this is a delicacy." And I was quite amused by that he told me that.
Wow.
So when we talk about foods and then relations, that's always a way that people have always found a common mean of intermingling when we talk about foods and
Let me
cuisine.
share some more with you. That depends upon the area. But, when each and every one of us go home, we change clothes. They might have one shirt and that's it, one pair of pants and it's raggedy. Some of them don't have any shoes. They don't have hot water. When I was there, it could be changed. They don't even know anything about hot water. Even when they, when they have a bill, they say joto, which means hot. And we are, if you go in an apartment there, you're only gonna see a couch or whatever. There's no curtains, nothing. Because we're Americans, and I'm just as guilty as anybody. We are hoarders, and most of us don't. Like when you travel abroad, I think you all should travel abroad because it gives you a taste of what the real world is like. Because when you get aboard, you get used to the steering wheel is going to be on the other side. The traffic is going to be on the other side. It's going to be the metric system. And we Americans, we're going to first thing and say, what's wrong with y'all? Y'all are backwards.
We're the only ones that don't use the metric system.
And we think
We're backward. They're
we're
backwards.
arrogant.
They're arrogant.
I did something that I regret to this day. One of the people that I met, they bought me an icy or whatever it was. And I didn't like it. And I threw it away. And that was half of his salary. And I didn't understand it. But I regret that until this day. Like I said, we don't care what color you are. We are not in touch with reality. you know. And we get and people they say, "Oh, we're glad to see Americans." They ain't interested. They're interested in the dollar.
They're trying to survive.
But yeah, it like I'm just giving you what I've been areas that I've been in the food that they have. It's a very simple diet. A lot of times they like meat. It's only maybe 2 or 3 times a week.
And I'm glad you said that, because I had conversations with people a lot, and you know, when I talk about, you know, going to a primary of a vegetarian diet, and you know, I mean, you keep some meats in there. People say, "Oh, well, Africans eat meat," and I go, "Well, what part of Africa are you talking about?" Like you say, you're in the city and you can afford to eat meat.
Yeah, okay.
Of course, you're gonna buy meat, but if you're in rural areas, like you said, you got to go hunt that chicken down yourself, skin it, you know, and cook it up. So, like you said, you know, maybe twice or maybe once a week. And we have to understand that, you know, us here in America, you know, we, you know, our diets are very, I want to say unhealthy, which is probably mostly true. But, you know, we have Africans here in diaspora, we have a misconception of how our diets originally were back in the homeland, because we're so accustomed to the American diet, so to speak. But that was some good points. But the elder.
Yeah. We covered a lot of ground, and you notice we just let you go. You know what I mean? Because you know we know you have a lot to share, and the people who are listening and looking at the interview, I'm pretty sure they'll be, you know, highly educated with the information that they've heard so far from you, Elder Sabamya. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was go back to Mr. Cook, because I know he played a big role in your development, your sociological and cultural development. In his Nationalist Manifesto, Mr. Cook stated that there is no permanent future for African people in America. Now, what is your stance on this observation? And if you agree, how and what do we do to establish nationhood for our people elsewhere, if there is an elsewhere?
Well, actually, during that time, because you have to understand, during that time, racism was at its peak. In colonialism, in fact, there was no place to go if you wanted to go anyway, because all of the countries in Africa was under colonialism. So, to say that there's no future, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
I would say there is no future if we don't galvanize ourselves into a united body, culturally and economically, like other cultures. And the Chinese, you don't have to tell them that. The other ethnic bodies, you don't have to tell them that. If we would just get a hold to this economic concept and develop at one industry that we control, like the hair care industry. We don't control that. The Asians do. And they took it from us. There's no reason why we can't take it back.
That's right.
Right?
Right.
And then there are things that we can do. Like if we like shoes, as we can compete. And don't say that we don't have any money.
Right.
Because we do.
We do.
Our worst enemy is ourself and our concept.
Right.
The only thing that we can bring upon ourselves is to bring each other down. But if we're going to have to make a dramatic change in order to change our economic conditions, and it's just change the concept. Be conscious of what you're doing. When you go out, if we don't have an industry, and all of us like fish, that's what then we should figure out a way where we can own a part of the fish industry, because we have a ready market.
Right.
In other words, let's say that we find out what our ready market is. Like the entertainment industry, we should control a big
top to bottom.
Yeah.
By now.
Yeah.
By now.
Yeah.
You know.
One of the things that we talk about quite a bit, and in our discussions. Again, and we're trying to do some things. We'll start to do some things on the economic level. But one of the things that we talked about quite a bit, as far as the Chinese is concerned, is that over the last 20 to 30 years, the first thing that the British Empire, because they're still the British Empire, no matter how you look at it, in the United States tells everybody that will listen is that the Chinese steals everything, steals all their secrets. And then the Chinese turns around and say, well, how did you get what you got? You stole everything. We're just doing what you did. The bottom line is, and the point that I'm making is that although it may not be outright stealing, it's time for us to start dominating things. Mm-hmm. Not worrying about what you think, what the Chinese think, what the European thinks, what the Arab thinks. What they did as far as the Asians were concerned with the beauty industry, the hair industry, and all kind of stuff. You know what they do? And I'm pretty sure you know this. When you go into their stores, you see these boxes with all these African faces, and pretty women and men and all that, and men on the what's the head wraps and all that kind of stuff. That's all you see is black faces. But it's not manufactured by no black people. Right. So when you walk in, you see a black face on the box, you see a black face on the container, and you say, you know what, man, that's an African product. Right. Let me buy that. Right. So they don't apologize for that. It's time for us. It's not stealing. It's time for us to dominate a market, do the same, employ the same taxes that they do, and be unapologetic about it.
Amen.
Elder, we have our think tanks, and Elder brought a point, 2 years ago to us about what we need to do as a solution is just tackle one thing. Let's stop trying to be Black Wall Street, and this is why I disagree with some of the top economic lecturers. Let's stop trying to own mall strips. Let's stop trying to own literally a Fortune 500. We have to start at a smaller, menial base. Let's tackle one business and just say, you know what? Let's take this business by the horn, and this is going to be ours. I don't care if it's selling water ice, but we have to get a hold of just one single business economically and say, this is ours.
It should be that hair business. That's what it should be.
Something.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of to me, when I see a lot of, I'm not going to say anybody's name, but most of the lecturers I see, they talk about Black Wall Street far too much. I think they need to more so get black people to learn how to do things at a ground level. I'm not saying, yes, I know the old cliche, aim your goals high. If you fail, at least you won't fail too far from your goal, but let's be realistic as well, too. When the Arabs do it, the Asians do it, they're not trying to open Fortune 500 clubs. When I walk in my community, I see nothing but Arabs, Dominicans, and Asians who own the store. They're not Fortune 500 in their businesses, and they're sending their children to college. But I did want to read one thing to you in African time, and this is something that sticks with me a lot because it just seems like only our people here in America are forced to know who every 40 some odd presidents are from front to back. But when the Arabs and Asians come, they don't have to. And this is what I wanted to read out to you. But this is not rocket. This is in page 85 of African Time, Volume 1. This is not rocket science, if anyone's paying attention. The Chinese have their own culture, history, philosophy. They publish their own ideologies. They print their own books. They don't ask for permission to think, study, write, publish, print, or speak. They set up their own schools. They're not praying and hoping for a white Arab God to help them out. It's nearly 1.8 billion people, and they are scientifically engineering their own salvation and rebuilding their own civilization. When they go to white schools in Europe, Australia, and the United States, they master only what's the best applied in science, engineering, and forget about the rest of the white Greek did everything lies. And that to me sticks to me a lot because when you ask an average Asian, Arab, did he vote last Tuesday? He didn't vote. Not that I saw. But who was out there? Black women, black men, voting for Hillary Clinton because they felt maybe some type of a connection to do so, maybe an obligation. But they didn't feel an obligation to do so. But they are the most financially set people in our community. And they are lesser than maybe 10%, if that. And I'm going by what I see in Philadelphia. I can't speak for New York. I can't speak for, Harlem, the Bronx, and whatever. But I can speak on what I see in Philadelphia. This is what we all see in our areas. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about that, it's just our people are browbeat in the head to know things that are really unuseful. in life.
See what you said. The Chinese people. So what did they embrace? Their ethnicity.
Your ethnicity.
There you go.
And what? The economic whatever.
And economic building.
Right.
That's what the African
That's what you.
Manifesto.
Right. Exactly.
Same thing. So it's not rocket science, as
No.
you said, right?
Right.
If we don't do that, and we're not, we got to straighten up because they're serious about killing us.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't need a lot because when, just like you said, when we go in Philly, because we know that better than anything else. When we're in Philly, we see Russian strip malls, we see Ukrainian strip malls, we see the different Asian
Korean.
demographics, the Koreans, the Japanese, the Chinese. They all have their strip malls. They have a retail store, a cleaners, a supermarket, a restaurant, all in this strip mall, and they all own it, and it's unapologetic. It's Japanese, Chinese writing all over. They don't care if you can read it or not. You know what I mean? And that's what we see in Philly. Like I said, I don't know what's happening up here, but when they go down to City Hall and they demand something,
They're gonna get it.
they're going to get it. It didn't matter, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter if they voted or not. Those people are a force because they run a certain neighborhood, and they control the dollars in that neighborhood, and they know that if you don't do the right thing, you're in my neighborhood, you represent me, whether I voted for you or not, you better do the right thing, because I'll use a little bit of money, and I'll run your butt right out of there, right out of the thing.
That's it.
It's the economic power.
That's it.
Doesn't matter who wins in
We
it.
don't care who's voting. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Voting, that's what we want to get across to our people, that voting, when we had our last discussion with Elder Olatunji, voting has never fiscally helped the American African. Never. If it has, show me.
No, it's not. It's a game, man.
What happened with the cop that shot the brother up here? It was up in New York, right? Was that the cop that shot
It doesn't matter. They're gonna shoot us someplace.
I know. What I'm saying is they came out in force, right? I guess it ended up being a Asian judge, and this coon district attorney, and this guy is walking.
Yeah.
This Asian cop, he's walking now. He killed the brother in the steps. There was no danger.
And the people that were out there that were protesting and hooping, hollering, screaming were business owners. They
were business owners.
And we have to understand it. It just wasn't everyday people, 9 to 5 working people. We're doing backbreaking work. No, those are those business owners out there.
Exactly.
Those who have economic power.
Because
we have a say so. We control this. We control this area over here.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to say you're going to do what I say. So that's what I think our people need to get up to speed and up to date. That's what I believe that happened in Africa. Africa wasn't technologically up to speed at a lot of times, and I admit that I think that some of our leaders were just backwards a little bit and just weren't up to code, and it was easier for the white man to come in with his cannons and his guns and his trickery to get over and rob, rape, and privilege. But go ahead, Elder.
Talked about it a lot during the course of this interview, but the one question that I want to ask you, I don't think you had really touched on, is what was your role and position in the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement?
Okay, I was a regular member.
Okay.
Actually, it was a very close leadership cycle. It was Mr. Cook, Professor Williams, Peterson. Peaker, Isaiah Peaker, and Robert Harris.
Are you talking about Walter Williams?
No, I'm talking about the African Nationalist Party.
I know, but the Williams, the Professor Williams you're talking about, that wasn't.
That's Rufus Williams.
Oh, Rufus. Okay. Rufus Williams.
And I was part of the African Legion.
Okay.
And I was just a regular member.
Okay.
And for over a decade.
Okay.
But that's where I got my real education from, because he taught me exactly how the system worked, and you cannot accomplish anything of any major significance unless you know how the system works.
Okay.
Besides your history.
Okay.
Good point.
That's true.
Because someone else said a great saying too. A man learns 2 educations: the one he's taught and the one he learns on his own. That's very good. Very good.
You also talked about in your bio you being in Harlem, and the recent phenomenon that everybody's talking about in Harlem when I go through 125th Street is the gentrification. And how much has Harlem changed since you grew up there in you know, it's the 50s and 60s to now? How much has it changed?
Tremendously. In the 50s and 60s, Harlem was like a community. In fact, most of the structures in Harlem has been destroyed. It was more or less of brownstones and apartment buildings. In 125th Street, you had, with the Apollo, you had 6 different theaters. And you had a dance hall. And then when you go on the weekend, and you're going to dance halls, it's like a festivity type of thing. You don't have to worry about getting shot.
Wow.
And then, you know, when you go to Harlem, every block was like their own community. They didn't have, and everybody interacted with each other personally, because like you would jump rope, you would do things. You didn't have these games. You didn't have television. So the kids played together. They played basketball. They have a season for basketball, a season for loadies, and you make your schools. And actually, you know, it was like a community type of atmosphere. And then when I went to the Cooper Junior High School, is no longer there. They paid. You had to learn. Because I learned how to type. I learned different things. They teach you how to type. They teach you woodworking. They teach you how to cook. In junior high school.
Wow.
So when they said, well, you have to dress properly. You got to wear a tie. You did that type of thing. So I got a good education in Harlem, because I come from a blue collar family, and the whole situation was you have to work for a living.
Right.
You know, and that's what I came from. Then I would go to the movies and watch the movie. I go to the Apollo. I had the opportunity watching James Brown, to watch all of the great stars. And you get in there in the daytime, they ain't gonna put you out. So I spend a day there watching, you know, that kind of thing. So it was a tremendous experience for me, and that's when I came in contact with College Crooks speaking on the matter. You know, and from there, I got my primary education. So Harlem itself was all African.
Okay.
Today, as you go up to Harlem today, I don't know it. The place where I used to live, all of the buildings have been turned down.
Wow.
And Harlem is about 40-50% white now.
Wow.
So it's a dramatic difference from when I was brought up.
Okay. We're getting down to the wire here as far as time is concerned, and I'm always amazed when we have these interviews with brothers such as yourself who have this lifetime experience and you know what I mean, and wisdom, for lack of a better word. You guys give up so much and give us so much. You're definitely a precious resource for our community. So I'm going to ask. I know there's a couple of questions left, but my last question would be this: talk about your websites, and we'll make sure that the websites, the domain names will be up on the narrative of the video, your newsletter and your blogs, and then after you do that, give us a couple of books that you look as your favorite over you know over a certain period, whatever your favorite books are, favorite authors and scholars. Let us know what that is.
Okay. The website is the African Manifesto. And it's the African History Month 365. But it's unique in the sense that it's about African history from the beginning of civilization to the present day time, 365 days in a year, no specific time. And the blogs is of the same name. It's the African History Month blog, the African History Month, the African Manifesto blog. Then I have an African American Network blog. Then I also have an AAA Drumming Society blog, which deals with the African spirituality, dealing with drumming.
Okay.
The the actually Vondon religion dealing with drumming from an African perspective.
That would be interesting for people to know about that.
Yeah. And then, what was else I was supposed to call?
The newsletter, did you say?
Oh yeah, then I have the African History Month newsletter, and it's in it has 7 different sections. It features the news, and then we have the diaspora section, we have the African section with 2 articles, and then we have tidbits of history. And the purpose for that is like we're having this discussion now, is to have news from all areas of the different communities throughout the world, so that it will be one forum to learn things that specifically impact Africans from our perspective, not from the European perspective. And what else?
The other one was the books. But before we go into the books, I just want to let the people know that your newsletter is something that we've been following even since we first started as a group, and we're about what, we're a year and a half old now.
Almost 2 years.
Almost going on 2 years now, and we have this brother's newsletter. That's how valuable it was for us. You know what I mean? It was important for people to see your newsletter because there's a lot of content there. You've done a lot of work over the years. You can go back in the archives. I mean, it's a great instrument for you guys to go back and check. But we'll put your other websites and blogs addresses up so that you can see that. But for the most part, if you want to go to the newsletter, you can go to our website and you'll see the African History Concepts newsletter. And the next one was the books. Just let us know some of your favorite books.
Okay, one of my favorite books is When We Rule by Robin Walker.
I love that book. I was talking about that book about 6 months ago. I love that book. One of the greatest books ever written, as far as I'm concerned.
How Europe Undeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney. And Before the Mayflower.
Okay.
And then we have Slavery by Another Name. And that has to do with the prison system.
Yeah, I remember another brother had mentioned that book, Slavery by Another Name. I think it was Olatunji that mentioned that.
Yeah,
So I had this all written down here.
Oh yeah, by all means, man. They need to know. Our people need to know what those books are. So if they don't have it, you can get it in your library.
Lies My Teacher Taught Me by James Longwell.
Okay.
And Powernomics.
Paradigms, okay.
That's by
Yeah.
Professor Claude Anderson.
Yeah, it's Claude Anderson.
And I think one of the favorite one, if I had to pick one, would be Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams.
Doubt.
It's classic.
No doubt.
Gotta
I would have been surprised if you did not mention that book.
The reason for that is, in the back of the book, he give you an economic concept. Because most historians, they give you one aspect, but he's one of the few that takes the time to explain the importance of economics.
Okay.
And of course, nowadays, there's so many different books out, and they all have a lot of validity. I suppose when I was coming up, they wasn't available. In fact, when you wanted to go to Schaumburg, you're aware of Schaumburg, at that time, right now, it constitutes a whole block on Lenox Avenue between 135th and 136th Street. But when I went there, it wasn't a whole block. It was just on the 135th Street side. And when you go downstairs to get a rare book, they put you in a cage. And they give you the book. And if you don't give the book back, you don't get out.
You didn't get out the cage.
Wow.
When you look at the audience in the Schaumburg Library, most of them were white. And on several occasions, I saw J.A. Rogers there. And to give you an idea of what Schaumburg was an African from Puerto Rico. wasn't a Jew. And he started that library a long time ago. And to give you a little history about Dr. Clarke and Dr. Ben, they wanted to close it. So they got who fought for, I can't think of his name. Ben well anyway, oh man, I forgot his name, but he fought, it'll come to me.
Okay.
He fought the public library. It's Alton Maddox.
Okay.
They hired Alton Maddox, and they fought the public library to actually keep Schaumburg at 135th Street, and they won.
Wow.
And I learned that at Dr. Clarke's memorial, and that came from Alton Maddox's mouth itself, because they fought him and they won.
Is that Schaumburg now being run on a foundation?
I don't know the specifics,
Okay.
but I know it's magnificent now.
Yeah.
I know they got a theater in the basement,
Okay.
and you go in the basement, and I'm happy to see there's a lot of Africans there now. Before I couldn't really believe it when I went. I go in the basement and there's nothing but a bunch of white people.
Right. Yeah, we had talked about that when we was, the last time we was up here with Infidisi, and he's going to do another Brooklyn Museum tour and the Schaumburg tour. He said that. He said, you know, it used to be the time when you went to the Schaumburg. I haven't had the luxury or even the opportunity to even go in there yet. So I want to do it. I want to do it this year. But he said, just like you just said, you go in there, you'd be just a bunch of white people running around. That was it. But he said, but it's changed quite a bit now. People are doing tours there now. Infidisi does tours there now. So it's good to hear that people are appreciating the works. Guys,
we went over quite a bit of information, and it was definitely, very insightful to listen to you speak. And I say this quite a lot to elders such as yourself. There's a real disfranchise between the youth and the elders. So every time I'm in the presence of elders such as yourself, I love to soak up the wisdom and just listen to y'all speak, because y'all have so much information, and y'all lived a very long time, and me as the youth, my best wish is to only to be able to live as long as y'all have, and to take the wisdom that y'all hand down and go even further with it. Myself, and with my child, I always talk about my daughter, and and to be able to pass down this information and wisdom is very paramount for me.
Well, I appreciate that. In fact, it is our duty.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we fall down, because like one generation don't pass it to the next. So I'm glad to hear that I can be of use for the next generation, and then I'm imposing upon you that will be your duty to pass it to the following generation. That's the only way that we're going to address these social economic dilemmas,
Right.
and we have to have something significant to say. We have to maintain our ethnicity, and above and foremost, we got to focus on the economic development.
I concur.
Basically what my brother Uwe just said is, we have to bridge this gap, because it's gone on too long, having information that's not being passed. Just learning, our youth need to learn humility and character, and how to humble themselves, because our people are become so reactionary, and they don't know how to handle things on a methodological level when things are brought to them. And just to see it and be around it, and how it walks and talks and conducts itself, we need our elders. Our elder, he told us before, there's a difference between elders and olders, because you do have some older fools out there. But we need elders who we could pattern our game after. It's just like in any sport. You know, people want to watch Michael Jordan. You know, you want to pattern your game after something that's great. So we have to bridge this gap, and we need to continue this dialogue with elders, and because most of you are like walking encyclopedias, you know, and we have to put the information down on paper as well. So we could always, if we just need to go back and peek, go back to it,
Yeah, I appreciate that.
pass
Really, I
down
do.
information.
I appreciate that because sometimes you work so hard that you feel, well, what am I working for? Now, I know what I'm working for. I'm going. Well, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to work harder. Okay.
Yeah, we're glad to have you accept our request to join our council of elders for the group. Definitely will be a valuable asset for us, for our young people. A couple of people that you haven't met yet, hopefully you get a chance to meet them. I know we do have something coming up in August in the Philadelphia area that we're working on right now. We'll make that announcement sometime soon. It's coming, guys, and I'm pretty sure you guys will like it. You know, enjoy it. But closing this interview out, Brother Sabamya, what would you say to the elders? I know you don't like to give advice and tell people what they need to do, what they should do, but what should elders do to be more active with our young people? With it, you know, because there's some elders out here who have the not only do they have the education and the knowledge, along with the scholarship, they also have the wisdom. But for some reason, they're finding a hard time finding the ears of young people. What would you suggest for elders to do to be more involved with our young people?
Well, it's not so much as the elders; it's for the community themselves. First of all, I say you have to get away from the Western poison of television,
There you go.
meism, and if they do to the
Say that again. Meism.
Deism.
Say it. I love that, man. Meism. I love that.
narcissism, meism.
I love that. Yeah.
I'll put it to you this way: you can't teach somebody that don't want to learn. You know, and if you don't know something, you can't teach anybody.
That's right.
So the term elder, to me, it has to be people that's knowledgeable enough, that's willing to share their knowledge, and to find an audience that want to accept their knowledge, and
That's
be
right.
and be in a position to listen. And you know, and if even if an elder says something that's out of place, that's wrong, then he has to be accountable. So it's both ways.
Exactly.
So you have to have this conversation because what it'll do, it'll stimulate activity.
Mm-hmm.
Conversations without action is a waste of time.
Mm.
So if we're going to have these discussions, we have to have an agenda of what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, you got to read this. You got to read that. You have to do this. You got, no, everything's take money. We got to come up with the money, and then we have to do this. Everybody's accountable for it. We got to have, it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Because once we expire on the journey, we have to pass it to the next generation. And that's the only way that we as people going to make a change. Because we have to make a change, because right now we are dependent upon other cultures for our survival. And it's just a matter of time before they get it right and kill us all.
That's true.
And also believe we've adapted to their capitalism too. Capitalism has become such a, I can't even describe it. Just rotten.
Mm-hmm.
Just a rotten ideology for the African to have, especially white capitalism. And we've adapted to his ways, and we thinking that capitalism equals success in life. And I think that once we gain that type of mindset, that we thinking that his version or his brand of capitalism is success, you know, not only just to take advantage of somebody, but to conquer somebody. And you use that word from the very beginning, to conquer. It's just about, I got to go conquer somebody. That's just his, you know, his way. And I think some of us have adapted to that way, where you just want to dominate something. I got to control you from top to bottom. I'm going to come to your country. I'm going to take over your resources. I'm going to take over your utilities. And then I'm going to give you extraordinary tax, and then you always going to need me. You can never write me out the picture. Somehow, some way, you always going to need me for something, and I'm going to be there for you. You know, and I think that's what we have to get away from, that criminal type of ideology that Dr. Clarke talked about in the African Holocaust and the true Christopher Columbus.
It's very simple, man. Anytime you just listen to what on the media, get money. You know, just the fact that they're just saying that tells you that there's a programming going on. You know what I mean? We don't think critically enough. You know, but to get back on what you were saying about getting together and getting this synergy. You know what I mean? That's what we need to do. Elders, the younger guys, the younger sisters, we get together and we put together a plan. What we've done in the Raising Awareness group is that we come up with, we adopted the books, the works of University of Cambridge Press. We have required readings. You know, we have our regular meetings and things like that, but we have our required readings as well. We have goals and initiatives that we want to conquer, and with guys like you on board, we'll reach those goals. And again, it's a journey. You know what I mean? It's a journey. And again, we want to thank you for spending the time with us, my brother. And we'll get that video to you very soon.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, and I'm so happy to meet you, both of you.
Glad to have you on board.
Hotep family, isn't this a wonderful day? We're here to celebrate our brother, even though our hearts may be heavy because of the loss. But this is truly a celebration of African greatness. Let's give all of ourselves an applause. I will try to be short and sweet. But we have to thank the Abyssinian Baptist Church, its leader, and those who have allowed us to enjoy not only this celebration of Olombe, but not too long ago we were here to celebrate another giant that was a partner of Olombe, and that was Gil Noble. And a few years ago, we were here to celebrate a brother who is deep-rooted in our tradition and struggle and great mentor of ours and Pan-Africanist, and that was Dr. John Henric Clarke. So in the beginning was the African woman, and the African woman brought forth humanity. So I'm going to step aside so my wife can say a few words for you. Dr. Rosalind Jeffries.
Very, very briefly, I just wanted to say that I'm on the faculty for many years at the School of Visual Arts. Olombe was a student at the School of Visual Arts. I spoke many times for him, and the title that he gave me was always Art as a Tool for Change. And that was because he felt that no matter what occupation you had, whether it was fancy or just ordinary or domestic or whatever it was, that your gifts should be for the liberation of our people. And so as an easel painter within exhibitions like at Kenkebula, he was with the National Conference of Artists. And that organization, I'm on the board of directors, and Kwame Brath was our president. And John Brath was also a part of what we were doing with Ed Sherman. And so I just want to say that no matter what walk it was, and I'd like to say wife to NAMSA, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. As long as you are in the arms of our Almighty God, you cannot fail because God does not fail.
Yes, Namsa and the family, our Queen Mother. I'm here to represent the Wadu and also to represent me. as a student of Olombe. You know, when I met Olombe, I was an imam over the Muslim Mosque, and I thought I knew something. I was in OAU studying under Ella Collins, and I thought I knew something. And I came from Boston to New York, and somebody said, I said, where do I find the political stuff? They said, oh, you got to go hear Olombe Brath. I was like, who's that? He said, just come to Harriet Tubman and hear Olombe Brath. And I came, and I heard this teacher of Pan-Africanism and black nationalism, and the person who understood we had to be restored as African people. And so in those later years, wherever we were, I ended up being his chauffeur, driving him home. And sitting out in front of the house on 7th Avenue talking, and we would talk about how to spin spiritual things into the movement. And so I just want to bring a metaphor. When I was leaving this morning, my wife had to go to work, and so she sent her condolence. She couldn't be here. So she handed me a note. I said, what is that? She said, that's what you should say about Olombe. And the note said, hero. Distinguished valor means courage. He was our hero. And you know the metaphor of Heru, where we get the word hero from, he's struggling with darkness at twilight to keep the light of truth into play. And he's struggling with darkness in the morning to bring the light back into play. And that's why he's our hero. So in our tradition, the old one, in the Ewe, they say, Sogbe Lisa. That means God is the totality of creation. And Olombe, as we are, is nothing but an expression of an aspect of the divine essence having had this experience. It was God expressing itself as Olombe. Thank you.